Good day, my fellow Americans and good people of the world. Today I would like to address you in regards to a concept I call universal basic innovation. It is a pretty common concept that most people know when you talk about universal basic income. The idea is to hand out to people a basic income so that they can afford to use that money to pay for cost of living or to invest or whatever it is they feel is going to be the best way to apply that money in order to pay for their way of life. There are various different projects that people have undertaken to test out how effective universal basic income is in improving the prosperity of a person's life, or just to help them to afford to live as prices increase and income in terms of compensation for work does not go up at the same rate as inflation, cost of goods and services, and cost of living goes up. But they're not always effective in securing a person's way of life. It's supplemental, and it has no assurances tied to it that these people will in fact in turn from receiving this handout in turn achieve a standard of living increase in standard of living, or a stabilization in their standard of living. And probably one of the most evidentiary proofs of the universal basic income construct was the COVID relief payments that were paid by the government. It was essentially a handout of cash dollars given to individuals during the COVID pandemic in order to supplement them not being able to work for a regular income. This was not enough to help people to get by, and there were plenty of cases where individuals exploited the system in order to get more money than the average person. So there were, in fact, very rich and very famous musicians who applied for COVID reliefs and got hundreds of thousands of dollars, where a regular everyday person only got a $600 check. So it turned out to be just another scheme by which exploiters are gonna exploit any loophole that they can find. So that was unfortunate, and it cost a tremendous amount of money, paying for people who made claims that they deserved more money than just the regular, everyday, average person. The other aspect of it was the regular, everyday, average person, and then those who exploited the system. didn't necessarily use that money so that they could survive a pandemic and the fact that they can't earn regular income. Some of them just spent it on buying frivolous crap that they didn't actually need. So the problem with universal basic innovation, as proven by the COVID relief funds, that fraud will be prevalent, and there's no guarantee that that money is going to actually go to improving their or stabilizing their way of life, and that given cash, people will just spend it on whatever. And not to say that 100% everybody's going to do that. I'm sure there were plenty of people that used those funds to keep a roof over their head and food in their stomach during a time when there was no income coming in from a work source. But the fact that that system existed, where funding had to come from the federal government and was given out to people who applied for it, and that there was no guarantee or assurances that those people's lives were going to be able to have some semblance of stability during a pandemic, and that they were never required to pay this money back, and that in the process of doing nothing, they got this money, and the concept of just getting something for nothing had them see no true value in it. And so instead of being able to apply that in a constructive way, they just frivolously spent it. So the concept that reflects in universal basic income is that if people do not value that comes without a cost, they just don't. And the idea of just giving people something for nothing comes with the tie-in that people will not genuinely value it. And then when you give somebody a handout, American society especially has led people to believe they should be ashamed for receiving assistance, for receiving what would be deemed a handout, for receiving something without earning and working hard to earn that in return, for receiving funds without it being tied to a compensation for work or a job. And so and that is a lot of what people used in order to demean and degrade anybody who receives public assistance welfare in society, because there's large groups of people that don't like the idea of giving handouts, regardless of the fact that a handout such as food stamps goes strictly to food and make sure that people don't starve. There are many individuals that will shame someone for receiving public nutritional sustenance, supplemental support through food stamps. So the whole construct around handouts has a negative connotation. It's taboo in society. Those who receive it are belittled and then feel shame, and those who don't want people to get assistance regardless of why, they just don't want it to be sourced from the government, intentionally uphold the taboo and publicly shame people. So the whole concept is riddled with this taboo and this negative connotation and social, stigma. And then the fact that if it doesn't come at a cost, you're not genuinely valuing it, and that it's actually degrading someone by removing the sense of pride of earning your compensation, doing a job which is rendering value for a fair compensation. And by removing that step, you are creating this sense of undeservedness, and that undeservedness comes with huge internal and external stigmas that put a blight on the entire concept of it. And the fact that society still demands that we work to earn money to pay for our cost of living, because that still exists, by creating a system that gives people handouts, you are creating a direct line of conflict of interest between those two notions. Because then you are going to tell some people you don't have to be productive. You don't have to engage in productivity. You don't have to be productive. You don't have to produce. You can just be a consumer. And the problem with that, of course, is if you continuously consume, but there's no production behind that, then we'll eventually run out of resources. It doesn't matter how much automation you create. There will always be a lack in the system that's going to either result in the output having to be rationed, or it's going to make it so that you reduce the numbers of demands, which means population decrease. And the nature of the world, the nature as it stands, will automatically see that there is an incapacity to provide for the needs. And so we will see declines in birth rates by natural order. And though we're an intelligent species and we can choose to procreate or not, it will become a part of this social ontology, the way we live, that we will reduce the amount of people that we create. So by having a construct of universal basic income and giving people a source of spending money to spend to consume, but not having a direct line, fair compensation exchange of productivity for that compensation, then there's going to be a deficit in terms of outcomes in society. And then people will not associate their effort for what they receive. This does not happen at the smaller level of just, helping people with promoting the general welfare to make sure that people are not starving or living out in the street, these sorts of things. But when you apply it at a mass level of saying everybody gets universal basic income, then you're removing that value exchange, the concept that we must have productivity and that there must be a value rendered for a value received. And so the fallout from that is, again, apparent in what ended up happening in the small test studies of UBIs, so universal basic incomes, and then also what happened during the COVID pandemic relief payments. So with that said, what I believe is apparent in terms of the trends of increasing the amount of automation that we have, which will make a lot of known current modern jobs obsolete because they will be automated out. and for there not to be a fight against that, rather embracing the efficiencies in the systems that we can create by having a automation in those areas to which we can automate, and focus less on stopping automation so that we can save jobs, because people can do work in other ways. My entire belief on it is that by automating what we can to improve the efficiencies of our productivity, we are allowing people to take risks for higher things and focus on things that are more intricate and humanity-based, and vital and necessary, that a machine or a robot or an intelligent computer program is never going to be able to fulfill that requirements of work. So there will be plenty of jobs to do that will liberate people from the laborious, tedious, mundane aspects of laboring with their hands. The point of time where we can eventually automate everything out and humans don't have to do those systems is still a work in progress. The Industrial Revolution did a great job of removing some jobs, but there's still plenty of jobs, things that you still need a person, a human, to do. And it's not going to be happening anytime soon where humans are going to be replaced at scale. But there will be a gradual transformation, and we should embrace it because of the fact that it is a liberation, and we should be working towards that liberation of our human ingenuity to no longer have to do the tedious work. Not to say that we should remove the encouragement for craftsmanship for hand working and laborers, but to recognize that we can do an efficiency of productivity by focusing on turning to automation that could render a value, a surplus in abundance, that we would be able to achieve what I like to call universal basic innovation. And essentially what it is a universal, accessible paradigm of these basic constructs of innovation that is about creating efficiencies in systems and then reaping the benefits of this abundance, tempering it so that it's not in excess, but creating abundance in the systems, especially in terms of accessibility, affordability, and distribution, so that we're able to take the production and create a mutual benefits from those surpluses so that we can achieve a level of abundance that we live in. And once we get to that point, it becomes much cheaper to produce and distribute, and much more affordable for people to afford that cost of living. And so across the board, you're going to draw down the cost of living. And so this innovation is packing as much possible value into something that is set at such a low cost that efficiency and that level of abundance is able to benefit people across the board. And so it's no one person that gets it over another person. It's not conditional by you have to, be poor in order to have it applied to you. It's intentionally innovating a system of efficiencies and abundance that is universally shared amongst us all, and that resource commons then becomes the means by which we can improve the efficiencies of systems to increase our efficiencies and maintain an equilibrium of comfortable conservation, where we remove the issues of excessive waste is growth mentality, that we don't overproduce, that we don't overconsume, but we live within that comfortable conservation of what is a sustainable rate and pace of producing something, consuming something, and then completing the cycle or the complete life cycle of resources, to make sure we extract the most value from it as is possible, and reducing the amount actually expended as total waste. So the concept of the innovation has the embodiment of reclamation and restoration and repair and maintenance and these sorts of things. And so applying in this way, we have this option to then have a proper intended use for our economy, where we can direct it to very certain and specific ends. Where we want to go, we can direct ourselves to get there. And we use our capacity to improve the efficiencies of systems to create this abundance by which we can distribute as an equalizing distribution to provide people for what they need in order to sustain a baseline standard of living. And a universal application of that provides for the common welfare, promotes that general welfare. And that should be our goal and objective as a nation of people, is to create allowances within our governing body to instigate and initiate the means by which we can get ourselves to that place where abundance is so prevalent because of the way that we've approached the efficiencies and systems and the efficiencies of our productivities and our comfortable conservation in terms of our production and consumption and our resource commons and the development, establishment, maintenance, and overhauling and upgrading and new integrations and new iterations of our systems, so that we can eventually achieve that point in time where our standard of living is raised across the board. So universal basic innovation is the idea of helping individuals invent, innovate, organize, create value chains, create distribution networking, and to cultivate human ingenuity and craft it and put it to work to design systems that allow for this excess that then can be captured as efficiencies, render more value than is needed in the immediate moment, and then massively and widely distribute that so that that becomes universal and then makes the standard of living basic that is provided for that comfortable conservation across the board. And we're constantly innovating on that concept so we can allow for more room for more people to come in and then be provided for. So nature kicks in to say it's okay for us to not be in reserve mode anymore, where we have to, stop procreating, but rather we live in such abundance that we can continue to grow our population, and then we benefit from that because we have more brilliant minds being brought into the world to help us to reimagine the future and rebuild it into what it needs to be for tomorrow and for every tomorrow that is to come. So it becomes this on a continuum sort of concept. But we're not in that place where that is possible yet, where universal basic innovation is possible, because we have an economy that does not have a proper intended use, that doesn't have a directive in terms of what we're trying to establish and achieve together as a collective. That's why we even go through this whole concept of being productive. And because we don't have that overarching purpose, we are left with the system of the dog eat dog, mighty crush the weak, free for all hellscape, where capitalism, late stage capitalism, locks down in this monopolization of money, power, and influence that prevents large swaths of people from ever achieving a level of prosperity that makes it that they can do anything more than just struggle to survive. And so capitalism not having its proper intended use has left many people by the side of the road. And we do not have equality. We have gross inequality in our society. And it's perpetrated by further inequalities in terms of racism, in terms of suppressing minorities from being able to self-actualize, to be able to get to the point where they are able to actively participate and contribute to society on an even playing ground, so they have just as much chances and opportunities as other people. They tried really hard with diversity, equity, and inclusion to create a system that ensures that people will not be suppressed. But even that system is under attack because of the fact that it has lost its way in terms of like reiterating to people the value of why it's there was to make sure that people are not getting left behind. And so that being under attack is just further proving that we are seeing a regression in progress, and we're moving backwards, and we're losing a lot of our hard fought and won rights and freedoms, and our liberty is being rejected and denied and stolen away from us, oftentimes by politicians who get themselves in a position of power to take power from other people, redistribute it to others, who then profit from the powerless, the people who have been now made powerless. And so minorities especially are affected by this because they're the easiest ones to single out and pick out of a crowd and pick out of a situation because of the obvious ways that they can be discriminated, whether it's their color of their skin, the accent of their voice, their nation of origin, the sound of their name. These are all things by which people can discriminate, and they do. And that creates inequalities, deeply regressive, suppressing, deeply systemically ingrained oppression. And it is all propagated by capitalism that has created this crony system of political power that skews everything in favor of a few people, and effectively legitimizing cartels that suppress regular everyday Americans from being able to actively participate and contribute to society and the economy, and to be able to prosper. Their prosperity is denied to them because of this skewed setup that is always and forever has been out of their favor. And then we have factors of gender inequalities, where the gender pay gap is the monetary manifestation of the concept that women have always been looked at as lesser valued human beings, even though they are the very reason humans exist. Without a woman, none of us would have been here. Without a woman's love and care, none of us would have made it. Without a mother's protection and nurturing and concern and lessons that they've taught, their children and passed it along, and cultivating a safe home space and providing food and nutrition and sustenance and expanding their minds and providing stories and protecting them from harm and working sometimes hard, always harder than everyone else, not just for work in a job for value compensation, but also working in the home on top of that. Women have always been given the full weight, brunt of the blow of caregiving, yet they are so undervalued, so underappreciated, and society has a systemic oppression of women to make them seem like their value that they render does not deserve fair compensation. And because of that, we have a tremendous amount of inequalities in the variations of gender, which then also brings itself out in a manifestation of why people fight so hard to defend the concept of binary genders and the concept of fighting against or transgenderism, because the concept of gender is so much ingrained into the system of society, and especially economy, and especially governance, because of the idea that only men can lead. And it's just a biased mentality of the traditional system, the way things have been, the ideals to which, we have assumed that that's just the way it's always been, that's the way it's always going to be, it's just the way it has to be, even though that's not the case. It's just, the ontology we've lived in for so long, because women had to fight for years to have the right to vote. African Americans got the right to vote before women got the right to vote. And so the idea about that is that there is so much untapped potential in women, and that if you give not just women, but caregivers in general, the just due value compensation for what they provide to the world, we would see that be the most increase in our abundance. That right there would be the keystone to a universal basic innovation. Just provide value compensation that is fair for value services rendered for those who do caregiving. It would transform civilization. But the idea that our economy and our governance systems are deeply established and ingrained with this concept of needing to have inequalities in the system in order for them to be exploited by those with the power to do so, and to disempower those who are being oppressed so that they can never rise up against it. And we are seeing a hardline fight against those who are starting to organize their power into coalition building to stand against this in terms of like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then you have the people on the other side who are still trying to fight to keep the system the way it was. No. We want those people to be valued lesser than, because we benefit from that exploitation. And so we need to be able to look at things a little bit different. And the only way that we're going to be able to look at things in the way that is just, right, reasonable, and fair, is to look at it in a sense of, we don't need diversity, equity, and inclusion programs to help to make the system fair. If the system itself was just operated off of the notion that everyone is free, everyone is equal, everyone deserves the same life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, those are inalienable rights. And our government was founded off of that notion, but we have not actualized it yet, because those in power don't want people to be empowered, because it's much easier to suppress and control the masses if they are in desperation mode all the time. So we need to change that system. We need to put our government and our economy to proper intended use. We need to establish a proper capitalism, which I believe needs to have the overarching directive and vision of achieving stewardship, and that America should become a nation of stewards. And in our stewardship, we are making sure that we are enabling the self-actualization of every person, so they are able to have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that we are able to establish a means by which they can actively participate and contribute to society. And as some would say, not just get by, but get ahead, but also in the sense of get yourself to where you're going. Give people a sense that they are on their way. They are in the flow of progress, and they are benefiting from the mutual benefits, mutual interests, mutual securities, mutual investments into progress that is moving along lines that leaves nobody left behind, leaves nobody by the side of the road. Everybody is included. It's a universal, baseline, fundamental, first principles by which, without this, nothing else can actually be achieved in terms of success. Innovation that we, the people, work towards together, that establishes that way of life, that way of being, and holds ourselves responsible and accountable and in co-creation and co-ownership of this way of life, this world paradigm that we're creating together. And so having that concept of universal basic innovation is providing for that means for us to create as much value as we can into those things by which we are being productive, and to make sure it is distributed widely to people and accessible by all people, in order to secure for themselves a way of life. And it's not a hand up, it's not a hand out, and it's not some impossible capitalistic chance at a big break. It is opportunity of a fair shake. It says each and every one of us has the rights and the responsibilities of securing our prosperity, our general welfare, so that we are a welfaring nation. And by establishing welfaring stewardship as our purpose, our place in America is to be welfaring stewards, and to do that in such a way that has across the board mutual benefits, mutual securities, mutual for our mutual interests, then that's something that we can all build on. And then it helps us to hold people to account who would violate that sacred oath of trust that we have taken with each other, to say, you know, I'm a citizen of a society that decides that stewardship is our way of being in unity with one another, in cohesive bond, in a way that allows us to not just survive, but to thrive together, and to make sure that nobody gets left behind. So there's no cause for us to be concerned about people struggling or not being able to make it, because we have created the abundance necessary to lift everyone up to a higher level, take us to that higher level. And by building such a system, we make the old system obsolete, where the old powers start to break down, and that these old conversations and narratives that say that this is just the way it's always been, the way it's always going to be, this way it has to be, because all these deeply embedded interests are all like rigged within the system, and embedded themselves, and they've hedged their bets in this one way, and they're dependent on it, and so they'll fight to protect that. They're fighting to protect the sense of where their loyalties lie and where their interests lie, and what is self-serving for them, and what it secures their reputation and their capacity to get ahead. The idea of being able to create a system that says you'll be able to get ahead, but not at the cost of suppressing other people, or to putting people out, or pulling people behind, so that they have no choice but to fall in line with your schemes, that it's always skewed in your favor and never to their benefit. Mutual benefits, mutual interests, mutual securities, and that's the way we should be moving forward. That's how we should be developing public-private partnerships in order to make sure that we are taking on our productivity as a right and a responsibility to which all people must actively participate and contribute in. And that the overarching purpose is to achieve welfaring stewardship. And for me, to kind of bring it on home to what's most important, what matters in this is the attitude that we're taking, and the direction that we are guiding for ourselves and for humanity as a whole, and for people of our nation and the people of the world, good people of the world. We really have to say for ourselves that we don't want to live in a world where there is tremendous unnecessary suffering. We have to say we don't want to live in a world where there are viable solutions, that we can innovate out our problems through living answers to the questions of how do we solve for this without creating a whole new branch of problems. And the direction that we move ourselves towards is to innovate out those problems so that they no longer exist. And to do it for ourselves, for our prosperity, for our happiness, to uphold what we as a nation promised that we were going to achieve is, the promise of we the people. It's a unspoken agreement. It's just understood that what's embodied in the we the people statement is our mutual agreement of what we stand for and what we're about and what we're trying to achieve and what we have to do together to make America work for 100% of the people here without the disadvantage of anyone, but in a spontaneous cooperation, without an ecological offense or a disadvantage that would put certain people out in order to get a few people ahead. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union and establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We ordained our Constitution to say that that's what we're going to be about. That's what we stand for. And we will not stand for anything that goes against that. And certainly, late-stage capitalism goes against that. Because it is predicated off of the notion that there must be a suppressed people to be exploited in order for it to have channels by which one can exploit power, money, and influence to gain more power, money, and influence over other people. Proper capitalism is about mutualities of empowerment. And universal basic innovation is how you use proper capitalism to its proper intended use, which is to achieve welfare and stewardship. And to me, it makes perfect sense that that's what we do, because it really is the one thing that is, just by its very nature, just, fair, reasonable, right. It doesn't have to be argued. It doesn't have to be, you don't even have to work hard at it. You got to do the right thing at the right time, in the right way, for the right reasons. And everything just naturally falls into place. It's a part of the natural order of things. And all we would have to do in order to benefit from that is to align ourselves with that natural tendency and then just reap the benefits of abundance that comes from that. But in that, of course, it means that we have to take on the responsibility to do certain things at a certain time in a certain way for certain reasons. We have to make it matter to us that we get certain things done and that we do it right and we follow through on commitments. And if we are in giving ourselves the objective and then we are aligning our intentions and we're setting ourselves the parameters by which we're going to operate, and then we're giving ourselves a sense of these are the things that are allowed, these are the things that are permissible, these are the things that are disqualifying, and then live up to that, make it accountable, make it executable. It's the biggest thing about whether it's economics or it's governance or it's just our social relationships. It has to be executable. You have to be able to follow through on commitments. If you can't do that, if it cannot be executed, it is not functional, because then you're forever wasting your energy on forcing people instead of following through with the natural flow of the universal force for good that constantly is moving in the direction of order, what is right, just, reasonable, and fair. You don't have to put any effort or energy into that. You just have to position yourself in alignment with it. We would see such an increase of our efficiencies because instead of spending time, effort, and energy fighting for justice in a courtroom or fighting for justice by being an activist and marching on the streets or signing petitions, instead we would be able to put that energy into applicabilities, actual action. We would be the agents for change, taking that on and applying it in these ways, in specific ways, to get things done. And then we don't have to bog ourselves down in the system. for justice to be true, for justice to be real and fair and to actually exist, we should not have an abundance of litigations in court. And we shouldn't have to have an abundance of peacekeeping enforcements in society. People should just self-govern. And then we don't need to have public safety because we're all taking on the responsibility ourselves. And we wouldn't have to have courts to make sure that rights are being protected and upheld, because people would just naturally assume that role, that you just don't infringe on other people's rights because it's not your place to intrude on their life or infringe on their liberties or to suppress them or prevent their freedoms. People would naturally know that that's the right thing to do, that is how to be a socially and civically involved citizen. And the constructs of governance and economies and productivity and humanities and relationship building, all those things should be to the benefit of inculcating social and civic ideals and holding ourselves to account to that. And once we get to the point where we just naturally are all self-governing, we recognize that it's each of our responsibilities to do that, and we embrace that responsibility. We wholeheartedly accept it, and we take it on and do it without having to be told what to do. You just naturally are self-determined, and you are a self-starter, and you get it done yourself. Then we don't need to have so much of the big government to do that work for us, because we naturally align ourselves that way, and that justice is served every day because we are just right, reasonable, and fair in terms of our relationships with one another. And then we will have a much smaller government. And to me, the unfortunate thing about America is that we have a three-branch system that is constantly being put to the disadvantage of Americans because the power is being exploited. Those branches of government, these mechanizations by which we produce governance, are being hijacked by people with self-serving interests and creating corrupt systems of using those mechanizations to skew benefits in the favor of a few over the cost of harming the many. And so we have the manifestation of this imbalance is being expressed in an executive branch that is now given immunity powers to just do whatever they want and not have consequences. And we have a highly corrupt Supreme Court system and general court system where judges and attorneys and there's backroom deals happening and justice is not served. And there is a multi-tier system in terms of if you have money to be able to pay into the system, the law works very different for you than it does for other people. And the fact that Supreme Court individuals can literally be bribed and there's no consequences to that. This is egregious exploitation of those powers and a misuse of them. And because of that, they have more power than they should have. And then the legislative bodies, you have people that are somehow calling themselves respectable representatives of the public, of the general public, when those individuals are wasting their time, effort, and energy doing infighting with one another and for political gains and political theater, and not actually passing legislation that is vitally necessary in order to secure our nation in a way that works for everybody. So we have a three-branch system of just stewing and seeping in an atmosphere of corruption. And there's no accountability to it. And all of it goes directly against the most universal, basic concept that was key core to our founding principles, that the power ultimately rests with the people, and that those powers that are not directed specifically to the executive branch or to the states goes to the people. And so the executive branch, the Supreme Court, the judicial branch, and then the legislative branch have been so busy about taking claim that they're the ones that should have the power to decide in all these circumstances of our individual lives, taking that power away from the people who are the ones who ultimately have the power. And then we have to plead and beg for our own rights to be able to be given back to us because these politicians take it away from us, and these government officials take it away from us. That goes against everything that America stands for. America stands for civic power, the power of the people. This is exactly why we need to have a fourth branch of government officially brought into our Constitution that designates the power of the people, a civics branch of government that can hold check and balance to the other branches of government to make sure that they are not infringing on the power, taking the power away from the people without their permission, without their discretion, without their want. And bringing that power back to the people, and then giving them a system of mechanization for anti-corruption mechanism in government through the civics branch, we can hold people accountable instead of trying to plead our case in a Supreme Court that is in cahoots with a corrupt executive branch or a corrupt legislative branch. The entire government has been hijacked by people who are disrespecting the values of governance, the values of their role, the responsibilities and the dignity of their roles, and just basically defecating on the Constitution and taking the Declaration of Independence through the shredder and saying, I declare that government has the right to control the population and neuter them from their rights in whatever capacity we have already given ourselves. And if we haven't given it to ourselves yet, and you try to call us on account, don't worry, we're going to make sure we bring it into our rule that we get to take away your rights and liberties in that way as well. The government is so disgustingly corrupt in its way of being exploited, and it's not everybody in the government that does it. There's so many good people that are trying to get things back into order so that we can take back the power of the people and put the power of choice back into the hands of the people and get the government out of our personal lives and put them in their proper place for the proper intended use of moderating and governance, to only intervene on behalf of the people when it is necessary in order to continue the perfection of our union. And that the civics branch could put people in the government in check so that they understand that that's the only power they have, and that anything else is not reserved for them. It's reserved in the people, their power. And we need to be able to take that back. It is the one way that we get ourselves in the right way moving forward in terms of progress. So to me, it's like that's part of it too. You can't have universal basic innovation if you don't also have the appropriate mechanization in governance and economy that is always leading into empowering the individual, and to only limit those liberties that would be an infringement upon other people's capacity to also remain free, independent, self-governing, self-sufficient, free and independent people. And so having that as the proper intended use, the reason why we do this thing called governance, and the reason why we do this thing called economy is so that we can achieve that equal standing, and that we can together be stewards of our welfaring, and to make sure that the world and starting with America, works for 100% of the people here. I'll close with this. The concept of making the world work for 100% of the people here in the shortest time possible, with through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone, is a concept that comes from the Buckminster Fuller Institute in their Fuller Challenge, which is to challenge innovators to come up with an answer, a living answer to that request, a calling to service to find a way to make the world work for 100% of the people. And taking that and applying it in achieves kind of this guiding force in my life in terms of like how I determine what matters, is to understand the Buckminster Fuller quote of, you don't fight the old system. Instead, you create a new system that makes the old system obsolete. Because the idea is that fighting against something is you're never going to be able to take it on most directly and to hold it back, because itself is a force. But you can sidestep that force and override that force and replace it entirely. Where people are like, why would I intentionally participate and contribute to the development of old world models, living in this old world system, and suppressing my potential to progress by remaining in this old world paradigm, when this new world paradigm is right there, just ready for one person to choose to step into it and start living out of that. And that new world paradigm is offering something that's far better in terms of benefits, in outcomes, and in terms of how you individually are able to fare well, and for how other people are able to fare well as well, without it disadvantaging anyone. And that system exists, and all you have to do is step into it and start living in and out and through it. And that old system just starts to break down, because you're no longer in that paradigm. It no longer applies to you. And you can help other people move out of that and then into the full meridian light of this new paradigm that says that old system, that old world paradigm, has nothing to offer you that is worthy of you and worthy of your time, effort, energy, attention. It is not worthy of you. You deserve so much more than that old world paradigm could ever provide you. And most certainly it is true that it is unworthy of our children and our grandchildren and generation after generation after generation to come. That old world paradigm is unworthy to be upheld. And for the few people that are fighting to hold on to that paradigm's legitimacy because it's beneficial for them, they'll begin to see that system breaks down when the people who they have to put at a disadvantage in order for them to have advantage in that old paradigm start stepping away from it. And they've entered a new paradigm, and they're a part of something different now, something much bigger than that ever could have been. And it's benefiting their life, and they're no longer there to be taken advantage of and exploited. And those people are going to start to see, oh, my system doesn't work if I don't have people to exploit. And then they're eventually going to have to be brought into the system where that exploitation just doesn't happen. We are mutually benefiting each other to a mutual advantage. We're taking on the advantage of improving the welfaring stewardship of the entire world, all people, and we want everybody to be involved. And for those few people that hold on to the old system, it's going to be harder for them to transition, but part of the process is helping them to phase out, to divest, to defund, and to self-determine a new way of being, and to help them to pivot. Because the reason why they hold on so dearly is because everything that matters to them, their entire reputations are staked on that, having to continue to propagate that old world paradigm. And until they are brought into the light, and they see the truth in the light, that there's a better way, they're not going to let go of that. And the only way they will recognize that it's a better way is if it's popularized. Once it becomes so obvious, like, this is just the way we should be, until people see that, wow, look at all these other people that are benefiting from this new world paradigm. Until they recognize that, they're not going to be willing to let go. And that's going to have to be part of the things that we innovate. We have to innovate out a way out of that old world paradigm. So that to me it's inspiring to think about that, because I see, America especially is on the cusp of change. You see people who are enthusiastic about voting for a new way forward because they are exhausted and tired of the old way. And that even those people who are, holding on dearly to this concept of that we have to make America, into this thing, it has to be changed. We have to make it into something different. Those people who are desperately in that is because they hear the calling too. Things can't stay the way that they've been. But the difference being between having a new way forward and making America into some particular image, that the problem is that image does not reflect America as a whole. And it does leave whole populations of people by the side of the road. On the other hand, there's potential for a new way forward that is really about finding consensus in our opportunities for consensus and our opportunities of welcoming people into this new way. That we move forward and we move beyond the limitations of old world paradigms and limitations of thinking that, it's an us versus them type mentality. It's like, it's us today, present, and us moving forward in the future against them who would have us stay back in the past. And that's not an enemy. It's old models, old ways of being. People who are desperate to hold on to that old identity and not willing to take this as like, wow, this is a grand opportunity to become a much better version of yourself. And for everybody to benefit from the momentum of us choosing to move in that new direction. It's inspiring to think that we can have a future that does not require us to hate other people. We could have a future that doesn't require us to point fingers at others and blame. We can have a future that does not require us to constantly questioning the integrity of our institutions. We can have a way forward that leads us into new opportunities that does not require us to hate our neighbors. Does not require us to hate certain ethnicities. And then it doesn't require us to identify with one certain group of people. It doesn't require us to go against our sense of good humanity. It doesn't require us to sell out our patriotism in order to be suspicious of our government, just so that we can justify electing somebody who wants to destroy the concept of a free and fair government. There is nothing great about making America in the image of Donald Trump. And I am sick and tired of people pandering to his ego. America has an opportunity to begin again, moving in a new direction forward that is honoring our Constitution, honoring where we've been and where we're coming from, and focuses on where we're going. And when I think about this present time, being in an election year, I'm glad that our elections happen so often, because it gives us a chance to reflect on our values, reflect on, the things that we've tried and succeeded at, and the things that we've tried for and haven't quite lived up to. It helps us to reconfirm our values and who we are as a nation and what we stand for. And there are plenty of people who are MAGA loyalists in America. And there's plenty of people who are Democratic loyalists in America. And there's a whole lot more people that kind of like live in the centric areas of America. And on this, spectrum sides, you have the political left and the political right. I don't care about the political left or the political right. There are better alternatives. The idea of bringing us together about this, what is core to the American identity, and to working out from that, making space for everyone to be included and everybody to be involved, but to not force anybody into, the far right or the far left, but to find a way to get people to come together in that common ground, that place of the sense that we all belong to the same country. We belong to the same nation. We belong to the same unified field of belonging. This is why we're here. We've been brought to this place in this time because we together have everything that's necessary in order to live up to the highest potential that humanity can achieve. And until we can fall into alignment with that, align and attune ourselves to it, we are working against our best interests. Every day I pray for the common sense to take hold in the minds and the hearts of Americans, to let them feel with their hearts and think with their heads in an alignment of their sense of what is right, and choose not because you're being paid to choose, not because it's going to be a certain personal benefit, but because you can see yourself living out in the consequences of your decisions. and for it to be a good thing for you, but that it also was a good thing for other Americans too. I personally cannot see myself in a Donald Trump America. I don't belong there. There's no place for me in that country. There's no place for me in that future. I see myself as being one of those that Donald Trump claims is the enemy within, because I'm not willing to pledge my loyalty to somebody who, by my standards, represents everything that America declared our independence from. And I love America. I love my country so much that I could never vote for somebody who would take away that principled value of independence. Who would tear up the Constitution so that institution and independence and justice and freedom and liberty are conditional on the temperament and mood swings of one supreme ruler. Donald Trump has spent a lot of time rigging the system in favor of that type of paradigm, and I can't be a part of that. It really makes me, in my heart, sad in my heart to think that people somehow hear Donald Trump speaking for them, or that, you know, he's going to be there for them and care about them, when he has proven he only cares about himself. He will only do if it means that he gets. Everything he does is conditional off of him succeeding at his ambitions. And he does, and he has, and he always has thrown people under the bus, discarded people, attacked people, so that he can gain, so he can benefit. And so it's like the trolley problem, right? If given the chance, would Trump choose to save the few or the many? If given the chance, would Trump save himself or the country? And I don't think that he is capable. I don't think it is within his nature to do anything other than self-serve. And then in contrast to that, you see Kamala Harris, who has always served for the people. She takes seriously the rule of law and the Constitution, and the many times that she's pledged to uphold it, and the work that she's done in service to it. She's not a perfect person, and I don't agree with all her policies. But policies have room for negotiation and consensus building. And she's all about that. Hell, that is the very reason why she's changed her position on policy, is because She's not rigid conformity to a certain way of being because she hasn't hedged her bets on one thing producing the outcome that she needs to have. She's about listening to people, taking things into consideration, and adapting to the needs of now. She has the capacity to do that. She has the capacity to listen, to consider, to contemplate, to communicate, to consciously engage in dialogue, to consider new ways, to consciously seek out best practices. She has the confidence to carry the Constitution in the forethought of her thoughts in every action she takes. And she's willing to concede where is necessary. And she is complementary to the concept of our nation in terms of we are a sovereign nation that is upheld by the rule of law. And she's spent her entire life upholding the law and protecting innocence, which is the most important character trait of a leader. Thomas Jefferson says it, that the main purpose of a government is to protect the people from harm, not to harm them. And when I look at a Kamala Harris administration, I can see myself in that. I can see myself in an America under her leadership. I can see myself belonging in that space. And I can see myself belonging because I can see her welcoming everybody in so that nobody gets left behind. She's certainly not going to allow those people to come in and wreak havoc, cause disturbance, distract people from what's important and preventing us from getting the good work done, or to try to degrade us and devalue us and to demean. She's not going to allow people in if they cannot be civil amongst us. She's going to invite them in with welcoming, that if you want to be a part of this nation too, in terms of let's work together because we the people, it's not that I can because I can't, but we can. That's what America is all about. And Kamala is welcoming to people. And she's trying to seek and find that common ground. And that's why I can see myself belonging there, because that's where I come from. It's a I can't, but we can. And nobody gets left behind. And I can only see myself in America that is the living answer to how do we make sure that nobody gets left behind? How do we make sure that everyone is welcome? How do we make sure that America is we, the people, united we stand? Donald Trump doesn't have the capacity. He does not have the capacity to be a president for all Americans. He's talking about using the power of government and the power of a commander-in-chief to direct the military to go after Americans who he sees as being his opponents. He sees them as enemies. And they're within our nation, and he wants them out because they don't belong in his nation. They don't belong in Trump America. Because if you aren't loyal to him, then you don't belong in a Trump America. And see, I just can't do that. I do not pledge allegiance to a man. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation, under God indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I really hope and I pray every day for the hearts and the minds of the people to awaken to that spirit, that American spirit that reminds us and we remember what we stand for. Remember what our flag stands for. Remember when we fought and that song was created by Francis Scott Key saying, you know, we watched a fight happen. And all night long we were terrified and didn't know if our nation would prevail against an enemy who would prevent us from being able to be free and independent. From an enemy that would take away our rights and liberties. And then coming out after all of that and to see that flag still flying was exactly the reason why our national anthem is sung in respect to our flag. And that we stand and we put our hands over our hearts, we take off our hats or we salute, and we say that I am proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget those who died that gave that right to me. So we stand up and we defend that. Because there's no doubt we love this land. If you can't have that type of spirit when you are trying to step into a role of government, and you can't hear in those words a sense of pride and prestige, of making sure this is the land of the free, the home of the brave, and that we are all free and that we are all brave, because we take on that responsibility every day to be Americans and be true to what America stands for. America is so much bigger than what Donald Trump tries to make it out to be. He's shrinking it down to this size of this insignificance in terms of the grand scheme of outcomes. He is not making America substantial. He's not making it significant. He hasn't made America great or even just pretty good. When he had the opportunity being president, he rode the wave of prosperity that was established by the 8 years of Obama's administration. Though Obama was not perfect in himself, he made a lot of mistakes, but you can't be perfect as a president. But Trump came in and rode the wave of prosperity that Obama had set up. And then when the COVID pandemic hit, as things started to, it was almost to Trump's favor that happened, because it hid and overshadowed the fact that America was in decline, because what he had done to rig America in favor of a few at the cost of the many was starting to show. There were symptoms that were coming and evidence proving itself that he wasn't making America great. He was making America in his image and struggling along the way. And instead of embracing a governance that helps to benefit everyone and uses the benefits of everyone's human ingenuity working towards a cause of doing what he said he was going to do, make America great, instead he focused all of his time, effort, and energy on fighting the system he thought was so corrupt and so broken, but yet managed to get nothing done because he was so distracted by trying to protect his ego and his brand and his reputation, and failing in every regard. He just didn't know how to be a president. He didn't know how to be a leader. He only knows how to be a performer. And when COVID came and it covered up the fact that he was an incompetent president, what shone through was even further competency to the fact that he allowed whole populations of people to die unnecessarily because of his terrible response. And I cried when I heard that he sent COVID tests to Putin when he was at the same time demanding that we don't send as many tests to Americans. The fact that he had no respect for those healthcare workers who were working on the front lines. He didn't care when there was a doctor in the Oval Office trying to tell him about the PTSD that those poor workers were getting from seeing and living through death. Trump didn't care about those people. He didn't care that that guy was pouring out his heart, that he felt so bad for the PTSD that these doctors were having to experience by being saturated with death all around them. Trump's just like, whatever. Trump tried to blame everybody else instead of taking responsibility for anything, and so many people died unnecessarily because of that. He proved himself incapable. That was one crisis that happened and he couldn't even manage it right. People died as a result of his leadership. It would have been a tough experience for any leader to navigate that difficult time. But Trump's incapacity to be compassionate and empathetic to humans suffering is the reason why it was a far worse fallout and more terrible consequences than needed to be. He failed America in that. And that is more than enough to say he doesn't deserve to be president. But then add on top of that the fact that he wants to be a dictator in America is so disgusting and so repulsive that he says that. I feel my skin crawl every time I hear Trump say something further about how he's going to punish Americans for not falling in alignment with his demands. It is so anti-American. And I'm terribly afraid for the fate of women. That Trump has done everything within his power to strip women of the right to choose what happens to their own bodies. And then Trump also has been found liable for being a sexual assaulter, and he speaks of women in a demeaning capacity constantly. I am terrified for a leader to stand on the stage and be any form of role model to young boys and men to make them think that it is okay to treat women terribly. And to only respect those to which you have forced into personal submission or who have pledged their devotions to you. And that make light of sexually assaulting and abusing women. He's making men think it is okay to steal the innocence away from women. I'm not okay with that. And I don't care that Trump's trying to bribe you with his followers, trying to pay people off to sign some lousy petition to make it seem like Trump's some great person. As if he's the only one that cares about your freedoms of the First and Second Amendment. There's lots of politicians with integrity that care about those things too. but understands that every right comes with responsibilities, and we need to have a governing force that can intervene on behalf of the people to make sure that no one person is going to take away the rights or the freedoms or liberties of another person, or to create an atmosphere of mistrust or violence that ends up causing certain people losing their lives, or to be harmed in some form or fashion because people think that they have the right to bully other people, or to intimidate other people, or to attack people, or to spread lies and misinformation, and to lead people astray from the truth. Trump literally thinks the concept of free speech is that he's free to say whatever he wants, but if you say something that isn't aligned with him, then you're going to have consequences in his administration. And that's one of the hardest things to accept, is that, you know, some of his biggest backers take freedom of speech in a similar fashion, where when given the absolute authority to determine how free someone's speech is, they choose to suppress those who would speak out against them, to prevent the truth when someone speaks out against them from being revealed, to limit the reach of individuals who don't speak in alignment with their interests. Those are the type of people that are a part of Trump's cohort. And so to me, it's like, you have the freedom of speech isn't freedom to say whatever the heck you want. It's the freedom to speak truth to power and not have to worry about the government coming after you and attacking you and imprisoning you because you speak the truth, and to make sure people are held to accountable. That's what freedom of speech is about. It's not the right to say whatever the hell you want. It's the right to help to speak truth, and speak it to power when necessary, and speak it to all people, so that we can together show one another what is the actual truth. It's one thing to question what is true. It's a totally different thing to deny what is reality. And Trump is stuck in that paradigm. He's still denying that he lost the 2020 election, because he can't, in his own brain and the own way that his mind works, can't fathom how he would have lost a system. And he doesn't even know how the voting system actually works. And to him, he doesn't care to, trust the institutions that we have created and established to make sure that there's integrity in our elections. He doesn't trust what those people said, that it was the most secure election that we've ever had. He rejects reality because it didn't align with what he wanted to have happen. And now he's threatening to send the military after the enemy within. And now that the Supreme Court has said that the president has presidential immunity, he could send the military after people and charge them with murdering these people, and he could get away with it. He would have no consequences for that. Not to mention what terrible things it would put our military through, the PTSD that we're going to inflict upon them to have to use force against the American people who are just simply speaking out against a dictator, a would-be dictator. Trump is laying the groundwork and saying all of these things that he's willing to do to take away from America everything that we declared independence from, taking away our independence and replacing it with reliance on him. And that is such a dangerous place to be. And I'm going to close on this. If people really, truly believed that Trump had the capacity to make America great, he would have been doing so much more in the 4 years since he was out of office to actually make America great. Focus on doing the work and his hands dirty, using his great business skills to build a business that could, a business solution, economic solution to the problems that he was seeing America face. Instead, he spent 4 years piss-moaning, complaining about the grievances of him losing an election. And justifying his failings during the 4 years that he had a chance to make America great and failed to do so. And it's not to say that there weren't some things that were accomplished in his presidency that did succeed at functioning. But given 4 more years after he has proven himself set on vengeance and revenge, and no longer caring about America's greatness aligning with taking corruption out of the swamp of America or whatever, and instead replacing it with a different corruption that is just aligned with him instead. His Project 2025, he's, on the political trail, hasn't talked about policies at all. He's given these vague things. Well, even his vagaries are in direct alignment with everything that's in Project 2025. He's not giving details because he doesn't have to give details. It's already been planned out in Project 2025. And so he keeps it vague in general, making America great again, because people have fallen hook, line, and sinker for that platitude. And then when he steps in, he's like, I'm dictator day one. Guess what? Project 2025 is going to be fully enforced from now on. I have presidential immunity, and it's a presidential directive. America is so messed up and so terrible, in such a failing state, which disgusts me that he says that, because it's not true. But he's just going to make all those claims and justify him sending the military after Americans and reset the whole system skewed into his favor, and then replace everybody in government that could potentially hold him to account, prevent negative consequences from his actions, and that could actually have the intelligence to run certain systems, are going to be replaced with Trump authoritarian yes men. That is corruption. And he's telling everybody these are the things that they're going to do, and they're saying, don't take him literally. Just take him figuratively. But he means America's going to be great because of all these things. No. That's not how it works. And then Trump's even said it himself. He says, I don't kid. He means what he says. He says what he means. When he says he's going to be dictator, it doesn't matter if he says it's going to be only on day one. You only have to be dictator on day one in order to eradicate everything that we have built up for years. And then from there say, I am the one rule, I'm the chosen one, as he's claimed himself to be. This is so... I am so disappointed in America that someone like Donald Trump has even been able to ascend into this level of power and influence. I feel pity and disappointment for those people who align themselves with Trump. And I pray every day for their revelation to be visited upon them, so that they can see the truth and to realign themselves with redemption back into an alignment with truth and beauty and the original spirit of intent of America's founding. Just independence of we the people. We should never give our power away to anyone, especially not someone who says that with the power that he would take from us, he would use whatever means within his power to further suppress us. I pray for Kamala Harris to have victory in becoming president. I believe that she will be one of the most consequential presidents ever, for the fact that she will forever represent Americans choosing a better way. Americans choosing to save our democracy. Americans choosing that it is more important that we uphold our democratic republic, the integrity of our nation, the restoration of the integrity of our Constitution. It's more important to choose for ourselves the best chance and the best hope for the continuation of America. When people vote for Kamala, it's a vote for America the Great. It's already great. Trump can't make America great because he doesn't even think America is great. He thinks America is a failed state. He thinks it's a shithole. He's so busy complaining about it that he doesn't take the time to see how beautifully successful it is. He talks down to Detroit, and I've been to Detroit. And it's not perfect because there's a lot of struggles across every city in America to improve the livability and the habitability of our cities. It's not a Detroit problem. It's a national problem, and it's because we spend so much time, effort, and energy infighting with one another that we don't have time, effort, and energy to invest in improving the livability and habitability of our cities. And the sense of community that keeps, us safe and sound in those places. But Detroit is a great place. It's a beautiful city, full of potential. One of the homes to some of the greatest musicians of all time, some of the greatest music ever was created in this space. The soul of the people has vibed in that city, and it is working, doing the good work necessary to constantly improve itself. But what Trump said about Detroit is the same thing he says about America, and it hurts my heart that he says that. And it's the worst thing he could ever say, because America is so much greater than he could ever imagine, and he fails to see it for what it is. He fails to see the value. He fails to see the potential. He fails to see the beauty and the truth of America the Great. It already is great. The only thing that he thinks is great is things that align with his concepts of great. And he doesn't understand what it's like. He does not know what it's like just to be a regular, everyday person. He is so out of touch with the regular everyday person, so out of touch with reality itself, that he only hears what he wants to hear, only sees what he wants to see, and only thinks that America can only be one way, and it has to be his way, or the highway, or in this case, the military will come after you. It's a terribly dangerous thing. Don't give power to somebody who says that they are going to misuse the power of the commander-in-chief against the people. Somebody who quotes Mussolini, somebody who glorifies strongmen, who idolizes dictators, who envies and befriends aggressors, those who intentionally invade free and sovereign countries and instigates war against them, killing their innocent children. Trump befriends these kinds of people. You cannot vote for somebody who thinks that way. Because I don't care about the little bit of taxes that you might save. Because if I, as a private citizen, an individual, can see a way to turn the concept of economy on its head through universal basic innovation that would improve the lives of everyone, it would be able to transform the concept of the cost of living and raise the standard of living for everybody across the board, and it doesn't have to be done through government system, who cares if he says that he's going to save you a couple bucks on taxes? Because at what cost is he making that promise? You're going to save a couple dollars in taxes, but you have to pledge allegiance to one man, and you have to sign away the rights to your body, and that you have to be willing to only get the truth from him and his yes men, and that you have to deny and reject science, and you have to be okay with us allowing our allies to be attacked by aggressors that would invade their sovereign nations. You have to be okay with us abandoning our allies in the United Nations or NATO. There's so much at the cost of saving a few dollars on taxes. And to make it seem like he's going to do something great with the border, building an expensive wall that has no proof that it's going to be effective when there are better alternatives. Economic means through business in the economy to solve for the border solutions that wouldn't even require military enforcement. Ways that we could transform the immigration system to remove all illegals, not by deportation, but by intentional integration, to solve for the reduction of fentanyl coming across the border, reduction of illegal crossings, the disempowerment of the cartel systems that exploit the fact that we try to hardline our borders to the point where it causes a desperation that they then exploit in those people who try to come over. There is an economic means by which we can transform that system. You don't even need the government to do it. If I can see a way for us to be able to do that through an economic means, there's no reason to destroy our economy by paying for a perpetual wall to have to be constantly built and maintained over time that has absolutely no assurances of success, that it will actually achieve what he says it will do. Not to mention the trillions of dollars it would cost to constantly have to deport people mass roundup of people and deport them and put them in encampments, all the crazy cost, and then not to mention the PTSD that you're going to cause and all the people that have to be involved in that. And then the economic decline that we're going to see because you're taking away people who are actively participating and contributing to society, ripping that value out of the system and leaving people struggling to figure out what they're going to do to make ends meet, to fill the void that has now been created by this mass deportation. There's better alternatives. There's so many better alternatives. And Trump lacks the capacity to even consider that there is another way. Because to him, it's my way and it's the only way. And that if it doesn't align with my way or come into alignment with the promises that he's made to people who have bought him out, who he's sold America out to in terms of promising that certain policies are going to happen, because people can pay him as a politician more so than they've been able to pay, and bribe any other politician to skew policies in their favor. He has sold out America, and he's written so many promissory notes for when he goes back into office for all these people, and none of them are for regular everyday people. None of them are for the general welfare of America. He doesn't see opportunity in obstacles. He sees obstacles in everything that he has to subvert or to become authoritarian over so that he can reject them and then force everybody into alignment with what serves his interests. The fact that he would allow for a law that was protecting the body autonomy of people, that he would allow that law to be rejected and overturned so that women effectively now are property of the government and that they can tell women what to do. That's not the type of person you want to give power to, because he's not going to stop there. And he's already making promises. He's not going to stop. He has a whole list of things that he wants to do in order to take away a person's right to choose for themselves. Not just about what happens to their bodies, but what happens to them in terms of who they can form relationships with, when and where they can start a family, when and where they can work. Because in Trump's opinion, there's black jobs and Hispanic jobs. And so he has categories already in his head where everyone belongs. And it's certainly not where you choose to belong, but where he says you can belong, where you do belong. He's going to put you in your place. And he's already promised that a lot of people, their place is going to be in jail because he's going to round them up with the military. And that he would be perfectly within his legal immunity bounds to be able to just shoot you if he chose to. It's utterly terrifying. How can people connect any sense of logic to any of that? And they don't. I know it's because he's hijacked their emotional sense. And he just hijacks people's emotion and gets people to trust him based off of an emotion, a sense, a feeling. Instead of like, it has to feel right so that when you think about it, it doesn't clunk, clunk, go to the bottom of your stomach and hit your gut and be like, oh, that don't feel right. It has to like align in your heart and your head and feel like radiating, like you get the tingles, like that's it. That's what I'm talking about. That's called joy. And that's what Kamala Harris is running on. That sense of engaging the heart and the mind with that sense of belonging, a sense of identity, of knowing who you are, where you are, and when you are, and what you're about, and helps you to recognize that's for me. That's where I belong. This is my calling, and she knows that joy is the source to be able to do that. But joy is also spontaneous, and joy is truth. It has to be natural. But you know what is artificial is fear. Fear can be artificially created, and Trump is very good at artificially engaging people's sense of fear and then exploiting it. Oh, see, the world's such a terrible place. America's such a terrible, scary, scary place. You need someone like me to protect you. And that sense of fear that he fabricates these boogeymen and makes you feel like there's something that you must be protected from, and that he's going to be there and he's going to be able to protect you because he knows where all of these, scary things are and how to handle them. He knows where they are because they're made up in his head, and he's just drawing you into that illusion. And he's making you see monsters and shadows that are just a cast of a different kind of light. And maybe you just don't totally understand. But then once you understand it, you can see it's like, oh, that's just the shadow from the light casting on this form. And now I know what it is, Go to the whole allegory of the cave. Trump very much has you chained to the wall, and he's projecting to you what you should think and what you should feel. That's not natural, that's not truth, that's not real. I hope that America votes in favor of the best interests of the world. Kamala Harris has the best interest of America, Americans, and the world at heart. Trump only has his best interest at heart. So I hope people vote in favor of the best interest of all people involved. I hope people vote in favor of truth and beauty and joy and opportunity and prosperity and the restoration of integrities in America. So people stop being so hijacked by the MAGA cult mentality. Start thinking for themselves again. Wasn't that what in the prior election we had the concept of, MAGA, make America great again, was like, make America think, make America think harder, make America think again. I just don't want people to throw away what our founding fathers gave to us in terms of hope and potential, and throw it away for a lie, a deceptive liar, an exploiter, a manipulator, an aggressor. A self-centered, egotistical, deceptive tyrant. I pray every day for Trump to experience his own personal revelation and to come into the understanding of what he's doing and how terribly wrong it is for America. And that he'll let go of this crazy sense of power that he's been given with this popularity and fame, and let it all go and do what he can to make America great with what he knows best. Turn it into a business, if he's such a great business person. I think that's the thing that bothers me the most, is that people think that if he was intent on actually making America great, he would have been doing it while he was out of office. Think of Obama since he's been out of office. one of my favorite presidents. He has been serving communities. He has been raising public awareness of who we are as Americans. You know, he's been in service to this nation, to people of this nation, and to communities. He got out of office and he gave back. Trump has been out of office and he has been doing everything in his power to get back in. He could have done so much good if he actually cared about anybody other than just himself. And his legal woes that he has, his own fault. Consequences of his own actions, his own decisions. If he didn't incite a riot that caused people to attempt to forcibly overthrow our government, he wouldn't have been hit with so many legal battles. He wouldn't have such a hard time selling his candidacy this time around to Americans. So many people turned the page on him already, saying, like, I refuse to stand by somebody who would intentionally try to steal an election and to reject the integrity of our institutions and to try to hijack the country so that he can stay in power. So many people were turned off by that. And those who weren't turned off by that were enablers. The fact that he said that he will give immunity, or not immunity, but pardons to those who tried to invade the Capitol on January 6th. Every single one of those people needs to face the consequences of their actions. And we need to send that message so that people know you can't, that's not okay. That's not going to fly in our country. You know, you have the right to peacefully protest, yes, but you don't have the right to go in and take our capital under siege, to threaten the lives of our political leaders, and to destroy the Capitol and to attack police officers and lead to their death. For people to die because of you being so dissatisfied with the outcome of an election. That's not how we solve problems in America. And it really is very disgusting and disappointing and pitiful that Trump and Vance and MAGA cult and the Trump-Vance cohort are all trying to say that January 6th was the day of love and that we did peacefully transfer power because there was Joe Biden got into the Oval Office. It's like that was only because the integrity of the systems that we were ever to have in place were somehow upheld despite being under attack. That speaks to the quality of our institutions and the safeguards that we did have in place, thankfully. And now we have to have more in place because we see that we had this other vulnerability and weakness in this way. Like, look how close we came to losing it all because of a few out-of-hand people decided to take matters into their own hands, effectively nullifying the voice of every other American. Those people were trying to take away every right from every American by rejecting their votes. You know, it's not just that they
were doing an insurrection, it was also for the fact that they were taking away my right to vote. They were rejecting democracy, denying me my democratic power. The Constitution protects us from that. The government is supposed to intervene on behalf of the people to make sure that other Americans can't infringe on those rights. And the fact that Trump and Vance and cohort and MAGA are all trying to say that January 6th was a good thing and those people shouldn't have gone to jail, and for them to say that, the election was stolen and that Trump had won. Trump didn't win. America lost. We lost a shred of our dignity and our integrity since that day. That was not the way to solve for that problem. It was an act of desperation because he had tried to overturn the election through the legal bounds by which he could. And when that didn't work, he led to force. And don't think that he is not going to do that again. And now he's built up a coalition of even more loyal people and even more people that have become MAGA cultists, who he could turn on any American at any time for any reason. And those people turn on Americans all the time. You listen to the rhetoric of their campaign speeches. Doesn't matter if it's Trump's rally or somebody else's rally. You listen to what they said at the RNC. It's all about villainizing people and talking about how we're gonna strip them of rights and throw them out and all of these. That's terrifying. That he's hijacked these people's minds and hearts and made them think that it is okay to go after other people as if they have the right to. He is effectively empowering these people to engage in violence against fellow Americans and other people, and to be biased towards them, and to intimidate them, and to threaten them. Everything about their message is just so repulsive. It's like there's no kindness in anything these people say. There's no kindness. There's no compassion. There's no empathy. And empathy is having compassion. Compassion is empathy with the desire to act. It's sympathizing with someone, understanding where they're coming from, and knowing how you can be of service and wanting to act to help them. And that is non-existent in the entire Republican Party now. It used to be a party that cared about that kind of stuff. It's not anymore. It has literally been overtaken by the MAGA virus, and the title of Republican is just the host of this virus, this infection in the minds of hearts of people that have now found a place of belonging in a movement that is all about demonizing and attacking other people. He has literally brought out the worst in everyone. That is the period most important thing that is disqualifying for Trump, is that he brings out the worst in everyone, even the best among us. Even the most pure of heart, he brings out the worst in us. He does not deserve to be president again. I can't see myself in a future where he's president. I cannot see everything that I'm working so hard to be able to bring to the world. I can't see any potential for that of belonging in a Trump America. I see a lot of really bad things happening. Trump is a continuum spectacle of consequence, negative consequence. And I hope that somehow that America can step up and vote for Kamala Harris, choose America over a maniacal lunatic. To put country over party. To put the best interests of America as more important than winning. Because the potential that I see in terms of a universal basic innovation, what could make this paradigm of amazing opportunity for, a welfaring stewardship paradigm that will improve life for every American and people of the world. All of that is possible if we can hold on to the core integrity of America, which is independence. And Trump can't do that. Trump will take away our independence and replace it with loyalty to him alone. So, Americans, think for yourself. Take a little time to contemplate. Put yourself in the shoes of others. Understand where they're coming from when they say that they will not vote for Trump. Step out of your little silos and your little pockets of thriving and consider the other as a real person. And taking that into consideration, understanding why it isn't in the best interests of every American for Trump to become president. Because he only serves MAGA loyalists. And there's far too many of us that will never concede, will never stoop so low, will never let our hearts and minds' elation be stolen away from us and replaced with this cookie cutter sense of identity, as they call the NPCs. You're basically just copy and paste versions of each other. Step away from that for a little while. Search your heart, search your soul, find some dignity. Care about your fellow human being. You have a chance to save them. You could be the hero. And there's responsibility that comes with being a hero. And that responsibility is all that it's asking for is for you to vote for Kamala Harris instead of Trump. Give the Republican Party a chance to reset itself, re-identify, free from Trump. Bring back a sense of integrity to that party. and protect America from the Trump MAGA distortion, the reality distortion field that he's created. Give Trump a chance to bow out gracefully and to redefine himself, moving in a new direction where he can actually do what he said he would do and make America great. Because he doesn't have to be a politician in order to do that. If he really cared about it, was really about making America great, he wouldn't need the power of the presidency in order to do it. If he was really a successful person, he wouldn't need to become a supreme ruler of the United States in order to achieve it. This is about money, power, influence, and fame for him. It has nothing to do with America in its integrity. With that, I'm grateful for your valuable time and attention and consideration. Until next time, be well.